What I understand, you had developed a great skill in hiding or denying. Is that it?
Yeah, I would have had.
What sorts of things were you getting up to?
Well, I suppose missing work would have been a huge thing. You know, I was working at the time. I suppose when my drinking really took off, I was working with a drinks company. You know, and I wouldn't turn up for work. I could give 2-3 days in the pub. I'd ring, I'd ring my customers. I wouldn't bother turning up collecting money. And a lot of it was hiding from at home as well. They wouldn't have known at home. But I suppose, you know, a lot of secrecy around it. All the
How do you hide a profound drink problem?
I think you become very clever with it. You know, you stop people wanting to know what you're at. You stop telling people what's going on in your life. You know, you become, I suppose, a liar, Ryan, in the whole lot of it, that no one knows your activities. You know, a lot of people would have often said to me, sure, you haven't a drink problem, you know, geez, you're not drinking that much. But like, I was drinking, at the end of my drinking, I was drinking every day of the week. But I had different sections of friends. I had different places that I'd go to. I'd give 2 or 3 days with one.
What time of the day would you have a pint?
It started, I suppose, what time of the day? I suppose I would never really drink when I was during the day. But what I found, Ryan, was during my job, I'd rush around everywhere. I might have 20 or 30 calls during the day, and I'd try and get them finished as quickly as possible. And I'd get to the local, and that could be at 3:30 or 4 o'clock. And one of my locals, like, there often times, I didn't leave that until Wednesday morning, maybe at 2:30 or 3. The proprietor at the time would have, I'd known him very well, still know him, and often at times he'd weigh up whether I could drive home or not. Sometimes I'd drive home, sometimes I might have slept in the pub. So that kind of behaviour. Never, I suppose, any responsibility that I would have had, like, say, you know, say I come from the sporting background as well. There are often nights that maybe I had to present medals or do things like that. I'd get into the pub that evening and I wouldn't bother, let it, I won't bother going.
Were you difficult, drunk, were you messy?
At times, sometimes I would have been messy.
Were you ever physically violent to somebody?
A good couple of times. There was a pattern in my drinking as well, Ryan, and that's what brought it ahead for me. And kind of bursts of anger came out on different occasions, and there's 3 probably major instances in my life that, you know, one of them became very public, but there was 2 previous to that was, you know, that was hidden from the public, let's say. But the last one was the last night over in Manchester, and you know, it was a GBH charge, and it was that night that I kind of realised.
What did you do that night?
Well, I was out drinking, went over to a soccer match, a good couple of us from home, and she went on the batter, and I was drinking heavily. It was at the end of my days drinking, and I was drinking every day of the week, and I had, for some reason, switched on to drinking spirits during that time, and I suppose there was a lot of stuff going on for me inside. I wasn't happy with my job, I wasn't happy with the sport I was playing, with the hurling, you know, with my own life. Just wasn't content in anything that I was doing, and, you know, and I think drink became a crutch for me in that time to cope. And went to Manchester, and a couple of us, and ended up the last night over there, ended up inside in a bar, and one word led to another, and took up a drink, vodka I was drinking, glass in hand, and, you know, hit a guy. And I said, what the hell am I after doing that time? And it was a frightening experience for me, and it was probably more frightening for the man involved, but, you know, for myself to do that, it was a realisation. I said, where am I gone? And I ended up being brought up by the police that night and inside in a cell, and kind of that made me realise that night, like, what's gone wrong with John's life, because this is not the person I was. I've become it, and for some reason, Ryan, it clicked with me that night that, John, anytime you're in trouble, alcohol is involved. And for some reason, you know, that was the first night it registered with me. There was loads of times, I suppose, I was drinking and waking up in the middle of the night and saying, what's wrong with me? You know, I wouldn't be looking at the alcohol. Loads of nights says, you know, I'd be sick and, you know, be missing work, wouldn't want to get out of bed, and, you know, and I'd be saying to myself, what's going on, like? But never related that to alcohol until that night, Ryan.
Okay, Dr. Chris Luke, you're with an A&E consultant in the Mercy Hospital.
That's the thing, and I suppose looking back at my pattern that I had, you know, my drinking had progressed. Like, from the first day I took a drink, I started drinking as well at 13, and from that day until the day I was 26, like, I had to look, like, that night, like, I just looked back through my life, and I suppose that night I asked and I prayed, I suppose, for a bit of help or a bit of support to get me out of my drinking culture, really, you know. And funnily enough, people came into my life at that time as well, Ryan, that were real supportive, because you know, I had to come back and face home, and I felt like, and I knew I let down a lot of people that were close to me, my family, my friends, my parish, like people that I like grew up with and that, you know.
Were you playing hurling while you were drinking heavily?
Yeah, at the end of it, Ryan,
How
yeah.
did you do that?
Well, my performances myself personally dipped for the last couple of years of my and people, I suppose I had built a reputation of, you know, being fairly good in the 89, 91 year and 93.
Yes.
And 94 probably I was probably at the peak of my my hurling, and I was going very well, and I picked up an injury. And it kind of, when I look back, my drinking started after that as well, because I think it had an effect on me as well. Because I knew I was going well in the sport, and it was always my life. But I found in the following year, just to tell a story, the following year in playing with Tip in the first round of the championship, I can remember walking around the Black Rock end in Páirc Uí Chaoimh and looking up at the terraces and kind of saying to myself in the parade, God, what am I doing down here? I'd rather be up there. And I think that, looking back, that was drink had caught me then. You know, I for a sport that I loved, like you know, once I picked up a hurley, I really loved the game. I loved all about it, and you know, the whole lot. And for me to say that after probably a year and a half of drinking fairly rapidly, you know, it's just my thinking had changed. And going back, I suppose I went into a treatment centre then, and I suppose the one thing that I got in there was I had to change my thinking. Number one, you know, my values, my behaviour. You know, how to handle, I suppose, life skills really, you know, and how to handle the pressures. Like, number one, I suppose, from my point of view with the hurling, because I came from a small little rural parish, and the first time being a hurler from the club, there was a huge expectation of me down there, and you know, it was a great time, and we had brilliant times and that.
What's the best advice you can offer, Chris, to people who are